Welcome into episode 52 of the Josh Hendrickson Show. I'm Neal McCready, joined by Josh Hendrickson, who just got another week off. He is the department head of the economics department at the University of Mississippi, otherwise known as Ole Miss, which you probably know by now has been hit pretty hard by the ice storm. They just announced that all classes, activities, and everything, I guess, canceled for another week. As of now, the tentative return date is Monday through Sunday, February the 8th. So I guess they're hoping to get things started on February the 9th. Yeah. Everyone tells their storm stories. Most of them are very depressing. What's your ice storm story?
Yeah, I think I don't know. Saturday it kind of didn't seem so bad, and I was kind of hopeful. But then I was watching the temperature, and it was kind of like, well, it's too warm during the day, and it's going to be too cold at night. This could be bad. But I was hoping that would just mean like icy roads or something like that, because then you just got to wait for it to thaw out, and you'll be fine. But yeah, then I woke up at like 4:00 in the morning, and my house backs up to the woods, and I could just hear the snapping of trees,
the rifle fire.
Yeah. and it was 4:00 in the morning, so I couldn't see anything, and I was just kind of like, like there must be some branches breaking off in there. When I woke up, there was a giant tree laying across my backyard, and I have some very tall trees in the front yard. Most of them are destroyed. And then also we didn't have power for about 44 hours, I think.
Oh, you got it back before I did.
Yeah.
Did you get it back Monday night?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, kudos to, I've said this all day. You're Northeast Power too?
Yes. Yeah.
I mean, kudos to Northeast Power, man. You guys rock. I mean, no joke. I mean, when that went off Saturday night late, and I heard starting at about 1 a.m, the pop, 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 and you noticed our landscaping job. Do you like that? It's nice, isn't it? It's really attractive. The front house.
It's really opened things up.
The front of our house really has opened things up. That's one way to put it. I told Laura, I said, sometimes people say we have a pretty house, and now you can really see it. You can really see it. I thought Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the earliest getting power back. So, I mean, mad props to the people at Northeast Power. You guys, you win the Superstar of the Week award. I'm stunned. You guys got it back on Monday. We got it back early Tuesday morning. Phenomenal. Just phenomenal. I don't know what they get paid, but I don't care. Pay them.
No, they do an amazing job. I mean,
incredible.
I've lived multiple places, and they are always really, really good about getting stuff done. I was telling everyone in my family when we woke up on Sunday morning, I was telling them all, like, listen, you need to prepare yourself, because we're probably not going to have power for like a week.
Yeah.
And so, we had, we do not have a generator, but we had planned ahead. So, I mean, like, we had a bunch of stuff, like, we had a bunch of food, that could survive with no power. And even the stuff that we had that, required refrigeration, it was so cold outside that
you had a refrigerator outside.
You could just put it outside.
Today would have been the first day without power that you would have started having problems.
Yeah. Yeah. And so it was starting to get cold. I mean, we have a gas fireplace, which was running the whole time. But I mean, that keeps our house like in the 50s.
Yeah.
It doesn't, it's not enough to heat the whole house. And so, I mean, it was better than it would have been without it, but it was getting cold by the time that the power came back on. But I thought for sure it was going to be about a week. And so to only have it be like 2 days was, was great. I can't complain.
Yeah, no, same. Do you know how this will impact the transfer portal? Out of curiosity, how will this open the window further? Because this will push the drop ad date.
Yeah, it might extend the
back
ad date,
right
yeah.
into sometime into middle February.
So we might be able to get people to just drop their classes and come here. Maybe Clemson's got some more players. We'll call them up and see if they have anybody who wants to come.
What'd you make of Dabo's comments? Did you like this?
I mean,
he's just pissed off. He just vented, and he did it extravagantly, but he was just venting. Nothing's coming of that.
No, I mean, I think that these kinds of I actually just I viewed it as it was like completely for show.
Yeah.
Because I think that they learned a really hard lesson, and I don't think that they have. I mean, it's an understatement to say this. I don't think that they've done this era very well, and
That's fair.
I think that they just don't have the organizational infrastructure to do it well. And and frankly, like, I just don't think that they're knowledgeable enough to do it well, because some of the things that he was talking about, like, I was kind of like, these exact same things happen to Ole Miss with players leaving at the last minute, and those kinds of things. But like, Ole Miss got compensated when those guys left at the last minute. And so, like, I don't know, maybe Clemson got compensated. It seemed like they didn't. It seemed like that's one of the things he was complaining. But if they didn't, that's on them. That's not an Ole Miss problem. And I think that, like, I think that what he did was to just try to get his fans on his side, so that, when this season maybe doesn't go the way that, they've come to expect it to go, like, he can always just blame Ole Miss for his problems and, and the system. I think the other thing too is I think, and this is an underrated aspect of it, is I think that all of the, I mean, you would know this better than me, but sort of like all the older, like, national sports guys, they eat this stuff up because that's their beat. Like, it's like it's a thing. Like, because I can remember it even as a kid, recognizing this, that, like, there are certain sports reporters who are like national guys who are well known. It's like, once you reach a certain age, like, you have to be like the curmudgeon, right? Like, you have to be the guy that's like, I remember when, college football was college football and this is not right. Right. And so I think that there's an element of that where it was kind of like, you can avoid some of the blame for what's about to happen probably this year to them again. But then also at the same time, rally some media people to your side. But in the end, I don't really know what it does. Like, you can't, the toothpaste is not going back in the tube.
No.
And so I don't,
not even a little bit.
And so I don't know what he expects to really get out of it. And also he's opening up a can of worms, because I can't imagine that the NCAA is actually going to do anything or try to do anything. Because if they were to try to punish Ole Miss, one of the things Ole Miss could do is say, okay, fine, if this is our punishment, well, here's a list of schools who did this to our players.
Yeah.
And so, like, and we expect them to have the same punishment, and we're going to announce this publicly so that you will be forced to punish them. And then what's going to happen is
those
that
10 teams go, well, okay, I hear you, Ole Miss. Let me show you what happened to our players.
Right.
And then it's chaos.
Yeah,
that's why the NCAA goes, no, we're not doing this.
And so I think probably, like, the NCAA, I can imagine the NCAA does something, right?
Yeah.
But it'll be
bad boy.
Yeah, it'll be lame, and it'll be like,
we are taking away 3 of your official visits.
It'll be a stern talking to.
Stern talking to. We wrote them a very harshly written letter. And they'll tell Ole Miss, hey, look, just say you're sorry.
Yep.
Just say, hey, our bad.
Yep.
But they don't need a series of press conferences. The day after Ole Miss goes public with all of theirs, Auburn or whoever goes, well, let me tell you what happened with us. We'll show you this.
Yep.
Be a dream come true for journalists. You get all the dirty laundry.
Yeah. And that's the thing, is that was always kind of like that was how the old system worked, right? Is that nobody could tell on anybody else, because everybody knew what everybody else was doing, right? And so even though everything back then was under the table, the people involved knew
Yeah.
what was going on.
Yeah.
And so like if somebody did that to you, you could turn around and do it to them. And so that was like, it was mutually assured destruction, right? It
Right.
was just like,
Right.
And so, yeah, I think we're just there again.
All right. You want to start with silver or you want to start with Minneapolis?
Whatever you want.
You pick. It's your show. That's why I call it the Josh Hendrickson Show.
Let's start with silver because I don't think anybody's talking about this at all.
So the value of silver has basically tripled in the last year. A, why? And B, why is no one really talking about this?
So why is nobody talking about it? I think because people don't understand it. I mean, even the extent to which you see people talking about it, they act like this is somehow related to like the dollar's status or something like that. And that's not at all what's going on here. So I think that silver kind of pulls together a bunch of things that we talk about here, and also it sort of illustrates one of the big things that's going on within the Trump administration. And so I think that one of the things the Trump administration has kind of realized is that U.S. foreign policy has been, a disaster, but not just because we fight endless wars, but also because we've sort of gotten out of the business of what foreign policy used to be. And this really, really started, going back to, World War II. After World War II, it's kind of weird because there was this, the United States and the Soviet Union were locked in a Cold War, but they agreed on this one issue, which was like decolonization, right? So in the United States, you had this coalition of people. You had a coalition of sort of like true believers, egalitarians who were like, hey, England, France, like you guys shouldn't be colonizing Africa. You shouldn't have all of this, all these colonies. That's old world mentality. You got to get rid of that. And, but also part of that coalition was people in the United States who were sort of foreign policy people who were kind of like, if we can get the British and the French out of these places, then we can have more influence in those places and we can get access to resources and things like that. The Soviet Union was also on the same page as the United States because they also wanted these European powers out of the developing world for the same exact reason, which was we want influence over these people, over their resources, that sort of thing. At some point, the United States sort of completely lost focus on this completely. But I think like the Soviets and the Chinese never really did. A much bigger conversation we should have at some point, which I think actually, like as crazy as it sounds, might inform some of our politics, is to talk about, Rhodesia. Okay, Rhodesia doesn't exist anymore. It's called Zimbabwe. But one of the things was like Rhodesia was like a British colony. They declared independence. And then after they declared independence, they had this really hard time because the British government was not happy that they had kind of declared independence. But it was essentially a British colony in Africa that was extremely prosperous. And it was extremely prosperous. And because all of these young British guys who had originally, been in South Africa and they kind of moved north into and settled Rhodesia. And then what kind of happened is like in that area, there were a bunch of sort of native African populations. They were very primitive. They were kind of at war with each other, that kind of thing. The British settlers went in, turned this into a country, made it incredibly prosperous. It was like known as like the breadbasket of Africa. Okay. Now, the story that you will hear out of this is that the Western world was really, really pushing for the British colonists to get out. They started saying like, hey, this isn't your land. You should turn it over to like native Africans. And part of this was coming from the Soviets and the Chinese. Some of this was coming from the British government itself. Some of it was coming from the United States. They were pushing really hard sort of egalitarians in the United States and Britain were pushing really hard because the way that voting and things work there is like you had to own property. And so, but there were like tribal lands that had been set aside for like the native population. And so they didn't really have the same ability to do that. And they kept saying, look, you should have one man, one vote. You should, all this kind of stuff. There was a lot of pressure on them. And what people don't realize is like the story that people then tell is that there was sort of an uprising of the native population and they took over and, rightfully reclaimed their land or whatever. Of course, that's not at all like what happened. What happened is the same thing. Like in neighboring Mozambique, what happened is like that was a colony of Portugal, and the Portuguese had a military coup that took over their government, and they basically abandoned Mozambique. And so like a Marxist leader like rose up, who was supported by the Soviets and the Chinese. And then the same thing happened in Rhodesia, is like those people in Mozambique started infiltrating into Rhodesia and like radicalizing the native population, like, hey, this is really your land. They stole this from you, like that sort of thing. And so you had these like egalitarian do-gooders in the United States and the UK who had, who were just like, yeah, one man, one vote, right? And then you had the Soviets and the Chinese who were actually on the same side as these egalitarians saying, like, yeah, one man, one vote, right?
Yeah.
And so what happened is, ultimately Rhodesia became Zimbabwe. It was run by Robert Mugabe, who's a Marxist. Zimbabwe, if you don't know, is sort of most famous for just like having the highest hyperinflation ever experienced on the planet, because they basically went in and started making promises to all of the sort of native population that they couldn't actually keep. So they had to print money to pay for it. They started confiscating all the land of the white settlers and all these kinds of things. But the reason that I bring that up is that this is sort of indicative of how the United States and the UK and the Western world sort of lost the plot, whereas the Soviets and the Chinese never did. Because what this really was is this was the beginnings of Russian and Chinese influence into these countries and over their resources, because these are mineral rich areas. And so having influence in those areas was really important. And not only that, but that over time, it didn't just stay in Africa. What happened is this foreign influence operation has continued and it's pushed into the Western Hemisphere. And so we sort of talked a little bit about this when it came to Venezuela. Okay. Is that one of the things that the United States is really trying to do is they're trying to drive out this foreign influence, which is still the Russians and the Chinese. All of this is about access to natural resources and minerals and things like that. That's what all of this is about. Okay. So what is happening with silver is that the United States, their foreign policy has shifted, and their foreign policy has shifted to basically say, look, we have become way too reliant on the rest of the world. The Chinese have ran circles around us, because what the Chinese do is they go into these poor countries, they get mad at the United States, and they say, hey, why don't you let us build you some roads, some bridges, some hospitals, some schools? Why don't you let us do that? And in exchange, like, we just get the rights to some of these mines, or we get the rights to some of this oil, or we get the rights to some of these minerals, right? And that's what they've been doing. And so kind of like the Trump administration has realized that, the Russians and the Chinese are going around, and they never stopped this sort of foreign policy. They never stopped doing this foreign influence for resources kind of foreign policy that the United States kind of lost sight of. And so what's happening with silver is indicative of what's going on. So it's a combination of factors. Number one, the production has not been keeping up with demand for some time. But also what has happened is that the United States has made a concerted effort to start asserting its power in areas to get control away from the Chinese, if not transfer this access to the United States. And so now what you're seeing this global competition for resources. And this global competition for resources is really the United States against Russia and China.
Yeah.
And really China, because China's behind Russia. And so that's fundamentally what is what is going on. And so what's happening then is that you've got this global competition for resources. And so what you've seen is then China put export restrictions on silver. And so you've got all, and so as you see all of these things going on, there's this mad dash. There's not enough silver to go around. They're fighting over the minerals. People are buying up silver in anticipation of this battle. And this is what's pushing prices higher. And production, it was already behind. And so prices are just, because prices are not normally, if there's something going like crazy in a market, you might see like a huge move in prices, but it's usually incredibly volatile, right? So like prices go up by, 20%, and then they come down by 10%, and then go up another 20%, and then come down by 10%. And they do that on their march upwards. That's a sort of like normal kind of speculative, aspect to these markets. This is not that. This is just straight up. Like the price is just going up day after day after day. And it's because people are trying to get ahead of this. They're trying to, in this scramble for resources. And people are not paying attention to this at all, because this ties into so much stuff that we talk about, which is we talk about like the international monetary system. And I said, many times that one of the problems with the international monetary system is like people need dollars for trade. So we run trade deficits because we're basically giving people dollars. We export dollars. That's one of our exports, right? We export dollars to the rest of the world. And then those dollars tend to flow back to the United States in the form of like central bank reserves that are, and they hold like U.S. Treasury bonds. What you've seen the Trump administration do is the Trump administration has started going to these countries and saying, we don't want you to buy the bonds. What we want you to do is we want you to invest in the United States. And if you look at the investments that they're making in the United States, back in December, there was an announcement that a company out of the United Arab Emirates is going to start. They've created a partnership with a U.S. company to produce aluminum in the United States.
Okay.
That facility is expected to double aluminum production in the United States. The United States currently imports about like 80% of its aluminum. They're not going to have to do that anymore because this investment is going to allow more aluminum production in the U.S. The other thing that happened is that in Tennessee, there's a Korean company, I think it's Korean Zinc. They have announced a partnership where they are going to set up a smelter in the United States, and the smelter is basically to refine gold, silver, copper, these kinds of things, zinc. They're going to do that in the United States. They're going to open up that facility in Tennessee. I think this is like the first like smelter in, I don't know, built in the United States in like 80 years or something. Like this is so, and so the thing is that if you're paying attention to all of this stuff, you realize that what's going on is that the United States has realized that A, this monetary system's not working for us. B, our foreign policy has completely lost sight of like what foreign policy is. And then C, when we talk about national defense going forward, like what matters is like battery technology, drones, access to minerals. This is what you need. Okay. And so what you're going to have is you cannot rely on the Chinese to do all of these things.
Well, what if this pisses off the Chinese? Because we've had a policy really in effect for, spanning parties going back probably 30 years of basically we kiss China's ass.
Yeah. Well, there's a couple things going on here. So
and that's putting it very, very elementary.
Well, there's a couple things going on here. So there is this view. I got really criticized for this, even though I was right. I got really criticized. I mean, I got criticized for this because there was this view for a long time in my profession, which was the more and more China moves towards like a capitalist system, the more and more market-based activity they have, the wealthier their citizens become, like the more likely they are to push towards democracy. Okay. And so the idea is sort of like by welcoming China into this sort of global trading arrangement and all these kinds of things, that by welcoming in China, what this would do is it would basically Americanize China. What I started pointing out several years ago, which got me a lot of flack in my profession, was that actually it seems like we're not Americanizing the Chinese. In fact, it seems like what's happening is going in reverse. So what you started seeing is like movie studios removing scenes from movies because it offended the Chinese government.
Yeah.
You had like you had NBA players,
Yes, 100%.
talking about how like who like literally opined, like Steve Kerr, right? He opined. You ask him any question in the entire world, and this guy pretends that he's like the foremost expert on said topic. And then you ask him about China, and he's just like, "Wow,
I don't know.
I really don't know anything about it. Like, I don't know what you guys expect of me. I'm a basketball coach." And it's like, well, you can do that if you do that for every topic. You can't do that when they ask you about, like, I don't know, like any other political topic, and you have like a 20-minute long spiel that you go into,
a dissertation prepared.
But then when they ask you about China, you don't do it.
Yeah, it's Chinese child labor that makes the shoes that your players play in.
Well, and then you started to see it because, look, like, frankly, and this shouldn't be surprising given our recent conversations, is you had a lot of politicians that were bought off with Chinese money.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that the Chinese learned is that you can buy Americans and you can buy them relatively cheap. That a lot of them will just sell themselves very, very cheaply. You've seen this on university campuses. Like the Chinese would open these like Confucian institutes and things like that, which were which were basically just ways to get influence on college campuses for the Chinese Communist Party's point of view. But the way that they would do that is like they're promising universities a bunch of money, and universities see a bunch of free money coming in, and they're like, oh, well, sure, we could bolster our Chinese program with all this money. And so it turned out to be very easy to buy them off. So you
now could just offer to like fund their football roster
in
exchange for like a giant center on campus.
I'm still waiting for the
it happened.
I'm still waiting for the first Saudi funded college football team. It's not far away.
What's your over under on that? I think it's less than 5 years.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. It's coming.
Yeah. No, they're gonna. Yeah. Once they look, basically once some of these teams go to private equity models, the Saudis they're in. They're gonna.
It's happening.
They're gonna be in, and they're gonna be raking it in. No, so you have all of this stuff that's going on, and the Chinese, this has been the attitude of a lot of American politicians, is sort of like, well, if we just play nice with them, we won't have to worry about this because like they just won't be our enemies. And that's sort of like, if I just be nice to the bully, like he won't continue to push me into this locker. It's not realistic thinking. The Chinese are already trying to influence the United States in their direction, and they've been much more successful at it than the United States has in reverse. And so, yes, it's going to make the Chinese angry, but I think that's the thing, is I think that the Trump administration is the kind of the first administration that actually recognizes that the world has kind of changed in a fundamental way, and that if we do not adapt to those changes, then we are not going to be a world superpower anymore, or at least we're not going to be able to have as much influence as we've had in the past. And so that's what all of this is about. It's all about this global competition for resources. It's all about it's all about that sort of movement towards a more realistic foreign policy, a more sustainable monetary system, right, and national defense, and having the resources available to you to be able to provide that national defense.
We have a couple questions in the stream that are sort of related to this. Let's see. Jacks of all trades. He has 2 questions. I'll just put them together. He says, is it too late to buy gold in our late 20s and only have a savings? These prices are insane. And then he says, what is the best way for young people to diversify their savings? I graduated in 2021, and it feels like everything has been in a bubble. Our savings are 95% cash savings. Now silver feels too risky.
Silver is probably not a good bet, because historically, like, silver has been completely demonetized. So like right now, like if you own silver, like the people who are making like millions of dollars from owning silver right now are people who have been sitting on silver for like 35 years, just waiting for this moment, right? Like it's not, it has been sort of, demonetized, and so it doesn't have the same sort of premium that gold tends to have. I mean, when you talk about gold, it kind of depends, right? So, like, it depends on whether gold is going to continue to be the sort of natural hedge that people use. So, even after the days of the gold standard, countries didn't stop using gold as a hedge. There was an old gold guy. His name was Jim Sinclair, and Jim Sinclair used to say that, like, that the way that you should price gold is sort of like a hedge on like the global hegemon, which is the United States, right? So the thing is like when the United States debt starts growing, what you should do is you should figure out, okay, how much gold does the United States government say that it has? How much debt do they have that's owned by foreigners? And what would the gold that the United States has, what would it have to be worth in order for you to pay back everybody in gold, right? So if they demanded like, nope, we don't want dollars, like you're going to send us gold, what would the price of gold have to be to do that? Now, back in like the 70s, and then again in like the early 2000s, like this guy made like legendary predictions based on that sort of model. If you followed that model today, like gold would be like 5 times more valuable than what it is right now. Now, I have no idea whether, I mean, that's a model, right? So
Right.
I have no idea whether that model will play out, because a lot of that depends on, okay, do people continue to believe that gold is this hedge? And could we reasonably expect people to demand gold in exchange for debt? Now, I think that there's a case to be made that a lot of countries are sort of moving in that direction because they're not holding as many treasuries on their balance sheet anymore, and what they've been replacing it with are gold. So foreign central banks are accumulating more gold relative to U.S. treasuries. I think that the Trump administration has actually been signaling that they would prefer that if people are going to sell treasuries, that they would buy something like gold, because they don't want you. The United States wants, they want people to help finance the debt, but at the same time, like as we've talked about before, the system that we have incentivizes this sort of like perpetual increase in our debt, which at some point becomes unsustainable. And so then, this what was working in our advantage for a very, very long period of time suddenly works to our disadvantage. And they don't want to transfer the advantages that we got to some other country. They would prefer that you buy some neutral asset like gold. I mean, the thing is that when you look at valuations are crazy. Like everything looks overvalued when you look at the market. And I think the reason that everything looks overvalued when you look at the market is like people have to put their money somewhere. There are lots and lots of dollars floating around, and those dollars are flowing back into U.S. assets. And so that's leading to these higher valuations. The question is like, what happens? Because sooner or later, prices should catch up to valuations, which would mean that prices would have to fall, and they'd have to fall significantly. But the question is like, if something has but the question is if something has fundamentally changed, right, such that people are willing to buy overpriced assets because that they think that that's the best thing for them, then they can stay overvalued longer than you can stay solvent. So you can't really bet against them. I mean, in general, the basic principle is like to try to be as diversified as possible. So you can never insure yourself against aggregate risk, right? So something bad something really, really bad that happens to the overall economy, whether that's the U.S. economy or the world economy, that's going to push all asset prices down. There's no real way to insulate yourself from that. You can insure yourself against idiosyncratic risk by diversifying. The more that you diversify across assets, the less it matters if if the only stock that I own is Amazon.com, and then Amazon all of a sudden makes a bunch of stupid decisions and loses a bunch of money and then like looks like they're headed for bankruptcy, my portfolio is now a disaster, right? But if it's one of like, a huge basket of assets that I own,
Right.
yeah, it sucks that it went down, but chances are something else is up at the same time to balance it out a little bit. And then also like, if you have a sufficiently broad basket, you can diversify away that stuff. So, the key is
if you have a lineup that hits 1 through 9,
Right.
if the number 4 hitter goes into a slump, it's not the end of the world. If you have a lineup that's incredibly top heavy, who has 2 hitters, and the number 4 hitter stops hitting, you're screwed.
Yeah. And so the thing is like you have to decide what you want to do, right? Like, because you get paid for risk. So the more concentrated that you keep your portfolio, right? The fewer the things that you put your portfolio in, the greater the potential return that you could get, because your wealth is so concentrated in one thing, right? Like if you bought Amazon in 1995 and that was your only asset and you held it all the way to today, you would be wildly wealthy.
Yeah.
Okay. But there's a bunch of companies that you could have bought in 1995 that don't exist today. And so in that case, you would have lost all of your investment. Right. And so it depends though, because for some people, that's what they view investing as for, is like, look, I'm going to put this out there. I'm willing to take this risk, and maybe it'll work. Maybe it won't. If it works, I'm going to be incredibly wealthy. If it doesn't, I'm going to lose this money. That's a decision that some people make. If you're just trying to grow your wealth over time in a more conservative way, then what you want to do is you want to diversify across a variety of assets.
All right, I want to get to Minnesota, but first, Jay Robertson, he says, interested to hear Josh's take on Trump accounts and whether this could be a good first step toward privatizing Social Security. And then we're going to get to Minneapolis.
No, I think that's a good. No, I think that these are a good step in the right direction. So these Trump accounts are basically accounts that would be set up when children are born. And I think that this is a big thing, because even just like a small initial investment in these accounts, if it just sits there for 18 years, right? Like you're talking about a considerable amount of money that people will have when they become an adult, right? And so I think that these are the kinds of things that we need to be thinking about. These are the things that we need to be pushing towards, is like we really need to encourage people to be setting aside money as quickly as possible. Like the thing that's important is, there's nothing greater than compound interest, right? And so if you can grow your wealth, over time, if you can have money that you're not going to touch, right, and then you're going to let it, and you're going to invest it, and you're going to let it grow, we need to create more things that encourage people to start that process sooner. And we need to do that because we need, like you already have all of these problems where you have young people who are talking about all the student loan debt, where you have young people talking about how houses are unaffordable, which gets back to our point about people just buying assets because like they need to store their money somewhere. These accounts are a step in the right direction because they're encouraging you to start saving on your child's behalf very, very early on in their life. And even if you don't, and so like, it would be great if you kept up with it, okay, and you continue to contribute to it. But even in cases where people aren't going to contribute to it, like through compound interest, these kids at 18 years old are going to have thousands of dollars available to them. And so the sooner that we can teach people about this and about saving and investing, the better, right? Like, and also because we need to change the habits of people, right? So like a young person, like even if you're 16 years old, right, if you go get a job at McDonald's, you should be taking, 15, 20% of that money that you're making, assuming you can afford to do so. And you should just be saving that now. Like you should just be saving it now. In anticipation that, hey, one day you're going to get married. One day you're going to want to buy a house. One day you're going to want to have kids. And so if you start saving that now and you start taking advantage of, the sort of compound returns that you can get on that money over time, then, you're going to be in a much better financial position than if you don't really start that saving process until, you get your first quote unquote real job.
All right. You want to get to Minnesota?
Sure.
All right. Here's a Wall Street Journal story from today. 2 Border Patrol agents who fired shots at Alex Preddy in a fatal encounter in Minneapolis last weekend have been placed on administrative leave. The decision to relieve the immigration officials was standard protocol, according to a Customs and Border Protection spokesperson, Tricia McLaughlin. Department of Homeland Security spokeswoman also confirmed that Jonathan Ross, an ICE officer who shot and killed Renee Good, has been placed on administrative leave. The agency and Secretary Kristi Noem had declined to answer questions about Ross before now. The investigation into Preddy's death is being led by DHS with the support of the FBI. Democrats and some Republicans called for a full investigation around the fatal shooting of Preddy, who had been filming immigration officers. Lawmakers have also called for Noam to step down. Witness footage of the episode showed a federal officer pull a handgun away from Preddy before he was shot at least 10 times. According to a Wall Street Journal video analysis, a preliminary Homeland Security report sent to Congress Tuesday doesn't say how many shots were fired or which shots killed Preddy, a 37-year-old intensive care nurse. The report, which came from the review of body cam footage and documentation, said officers tried to move Preddy off a roadway, before he wouldn't move. After being pepper sprayed, Preddy still resisted custody, according to the report, and a struggle ensued. During the struggle, a Border Patrol agent yelled, "He's got a gun," several times, the report said. After the shooting, an agent advised he had possession of Preddy's firearm, which he later put in his vehicle, according to the report. Attorney General Pam Bondi was in Minneapolis Wednesday, where immigration officials arrested several people for assaulting, resisting, or impeding federal officers, she said. "I've said it before, and I'll say it again. Nothing will stop President Trump and this Department of Justice from enforcing the law," she said in a post on X. I guess your thoughts on that incident. It was one of those deals where I knew it had happened. I didn't have power, couldn't see it. Actually, today was the first day that I saw it. I had to search for it. What are your thoughts on this particular incident?
I think that, first of all, as it relates to the incident itself, I think there's like so much ignorance at play here. Like there's a sort of like every one of these videos, there's sort of like this blank slate approach to it, right? That like by watching the video, I can make a determination about what should and should not have happened. And I think that is remarkably bad. I think it's bad. It's bad because you are creating a public conversation that is now filled with just blatant errors. So let me explain what I mean.
Okay.
If you ever take a firearms class, if you ever go, this man had a concealed carry permit. If you ever go to a concealed carry class, they will spend a lot of time talking to you about interactions with law enforcement, whether you have already been involved in a shooting or whether you're just having a chance altercation, like you're carrying a firearm and you get pulled over by the police. What do you do? Okay. Because in some states, you are actually required to tell the police, to inform the police officer, "Hey, I'm carrying," and you need to know that, right? But regardless of whether your state has that rule, what you are taught in these classes are, for example, like if you're going to have an interaction with the police, you should have a way to disclose that. So one of the things that they will teach you is, like, let's say you're carrying and you get pulled over for speeding or something like that.
All right.
That what you should do is not just have your ID and insurance information and registration ready for the police officer, but that you should also actually take your permit and have that in the stack. That way, the police officer, as he's going through your stuff, can see this is a person who has a permit to carry a concealed weapon. He might be armed, right? There are, but also in that instance, it's important that when you make that disclosure, that the other thing that they will teach you is that your hands need to be seen at all times. Like you should keep your hands on the steering wheel or on the dashboard or something like that, so they can see where your hands are. So they know that you're not reaching for something or getting something. But they know that you have this. The other thing that you learn in these classes is that concealed carry creates an additional responsibility on you as a human being. And that additional responsibility is that you need to go out of your way to avoid a confrontation.
Yeah.
And you need to do that because that will minimize the chances that you or someone else gets shot for a reason they should not have been shot, right? Because if it's just two people and they're both unarmed and things get really heated and they get physical, you know, that's one thing. But if you have the exact same thing and then one or both people are armed, then this could have a much different outcome. And so the thing is that if you are actually going to carry a weapon, there is a greater responsibility on you than somebody who's not carrying a weapon.
Yeah.
And you are taught this.
Yes.
This is part of your firearms training is, listen, if you're going to walk around with this thing like in your waistband or on your hip or wherever it is, right? Or in your car or whatever, if you're going to walk around with this thing, you have this additional responsibility on yourself and to avoid conflict. And it's precisely to keep you out of these situations. You do not want to be shot because of a misunderstanding. You do not want to be shot because you did not disclose that you're armed, and now all of a sudden a police officer finds that you're armed, and now he wonders, did you strategically not tell me? Did you whatever?
Because you should assume, and I don't carry, but I would assume if I did that two things. One, law enforcement in general are on edge. And if I were in law enforcement, I'd be on edge too. You never know, right? As a cop, which stop is going to be the violent stop. You never know which house that you get called to is going to be the one that opens fire. And so you're probably always on edge. And if you're carrying and they see you carrying, it's going to make them even more alert and more on edge. And so that's what. Go ahead.
This is that's the frustrating thing to me about this, is that people have tried to make this out to be a First Amendment issue and a Second Amendment issue. So what they have said is this is a person who is just out exercising his First Amendment right to protest. That's one.
Okay.
The other thing is this is just a man who's out there, expressing his Second Amendment right to carry.
Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
The problem with that is that he wasn't. So first of all, the First Amendment is about peaceful protesting. Okay. By all accounts, he was not peacefully protesting. He was trying to interfere with the operations of these officers. That's not peaceful. Okay. The second thing is
peaceful is walking up and down the street carrying a sign saying no more ICE or this is bad or whatever. But you're not interfering with you, and you absolutely have that right. That is a First Amendment right to march up and down the street. But
once you engage physically,
that's not what they were doing.
No. Once you engage physically, that's over. Like, he already had been pepper sprayed because of a physical altercation, which again is actually, like, in a concealed carry class, this is another thing that they would teach you, is that actually, like, if you're going to carry a gun, you should probably carry like some pepper spray or something like that, because if you can use pepper spray instead of a gun, that's preferable, right? And so, like, it might actually be a good idea to have that to utilize first in an altercation. But the other thing about this is that he did not get shot because he was carrying a firearm. Okay, he got shot because he was in a physical altercation. It appears that the gun inadvertently discharged. That when the gun was taken out of his waistband, that either the officer who took it out of his waistband accidentally discharged the weapon, or because these 6-hour guns, there's a dispute. There's a legal dispute about whether or not this is true or not, but there are claims that they actually misfire. Okay, so like, or not misfire, but like fire without the trigger pull. Now, but regardless, the point is there doesn't seem to be a genuine understanding about the law versus like so people seem to make these statements like this man shouldn't have been shot. Like, I agree, he shouldn't have been shot. Like in the sense that, like, that's tragic and that this situation could have been avoided. So I do agree in that sense. The problem is like everything they tell you to do to avoid this happening, he did not do. He did not disclose he had a weapon. He did not go out of his way to avoid confrontation. He was initiating confrontation. He did not disclose that he had a weapon. He did so all of these things are like a series of mistakes that led to this. The other thing is that these people don't seem to understand the difference between whether something should happen and whether something is legally permissible. Because
I think see, this is where I'm not to interrupt, but this is where I'm probably speaking for a lot of people here, because today again was the first day I saw this, and my initial reaction, and then I had to kind of think about it, was, okay, you're not protesting, you're trying to disrupt the noise, everything. There's an altercation. Something happens to alert the ICE officers to he's armed. And then I say, but when you took his weapon, he's no longer armed and you shoot 10 times? That feels like a step too far. And again, I'm not in law enforcement. I don't know what the ICE officers deal with. I don't know what their training is. I don't know. I'm not judging. I'm really not. But I'm watching this going, now, the one thing that you can't get away from rationally, this is not political, this is rational, is that if you don't interfere, no matter your feelings, no matter if you think this is the worst thing that's ever happened, or you think this is the most constitutional thing that's ever happened, or anything in between on that spectrum, if you don't interfere with the work that these federal agents are doing, you're not going to get shot. Once you interfere, you start the process of going down the road of a chain of events that could lead to you being shot. We've now seen that twice. There's also, I would assume, thousands of ICE activities that did not result in anyone being shot. We don't talk about those. We talk about the times when someone was shot. And I just think there's a lot there that, again, I'm driving down the road, I get pulled over. I'm on alert. I'm respectful to the officer, even if I think I shouldn't have been pulled over, even if I think this is total horseshit. I'm my attitude, and I've taught my kids this. I've said, hey, you can challenge this in court, right? You're entitled. Probably not going to go well, but you are entitled to challenge this in court. But challenging the officer in the field is not a great plan ever.
Well, and the reason I bring up what happens in this training is because this training is designed to keep you alive. Like, that's what the training is for.
Right.
It's like, if you're going to carry a firearm, you need to understand the risks to you of carrying that firearm.
Yeah.
And you need, and so because, and the very point of it is that there are things that can go wrong and that you cannot come back from. And you need to do everything in your power to avoid the things that can go wrong. So that's why I bring up the training. The other thing is that the legality question is a weird thing because, like, if you get shot and killed by the police, like, it doesn't do your family any good to be like, well, the officer is going to go to jail, right? Like, that doesn't do your like you're dead,
right?
Okay. And the other thing is, people actually don't seem to understand the legal standard here. Like, the legal standard is that you are allowed to fire in self-defense if you fear for your life. So if you are one of these officers and you're involved in this and you hear a gunshot and you have drawn your gun and you see something in this person's hand, you have to make a split-second decision, because if you make the wrong decision, it could be you that gets shot.
Right.
And so, and the thing is that if you are in that position where you fear for your life and you have reason to believe that you are in imminent danger, that is self-defense.
Yes, that is legal justification for defending yourself.
And so the thing is that people, but but that's my other frustration with this is like people don't even seem to understand that, because people want to say like, well, I watched the video and he shouldn't have been shot, and so therefore these guys should go to jail. Okay, well, none of that follows from anything that you just said, right? Like somebody doesn't go to jail because like you look at the situation and you just think that it was handled poorly. Like, yes, like there were lots of things that were handled poorly, but there were also many things that were handled poorly by the person who got shot. And it's important that people understand this, because there do seem to be these people who think that like these interactions, I guess this is what I'm getting to.
Okay.
There seems to be so many people who think that these interactions with the police are not real. Like they seem to think like this is all like on television. Like, because I see it on my phone, and so it's not real. It's like I'm watching a movie, I'm watching a television show. Like, this isn't real. No, this is real. Like, you can die. And when you show up to protest ICE and you are armed with a firearm, and then you get into physical altercations and you try to impede them from doing their job, like, no, you shouldn't end up dead just because you impeded them. But the likelihood, I mean, what it reminds me of is like,
you started down that road that could lead to a chain of events that could lead to you being dead. Well, that's to me, that's the point. If you never start going down that road, well, it won't lead to that. But once you take step one down that road, every subsequent step moves you closer to a spot where this could happen to you. You have to understand that when you walk into this real life situation with these real life people who are federal agents who are executing federal orders, you know they're armed, you know they're on edge. I'm not saying anyone deserves to get killed at all, but I'm saying you have to have some common sense. You have to think, okay, this is a dangerous situation. I'm armed. That makes me, in their eyes, they don't know who I am. That makes me, in their eyes, someone to be aware of. And then if I'm going to get involved in a physical altercation, well, now I'm going down the road of a path that leads to bad outcomes.
Well, and it's important for people to understand this, because look, there's no bringing back this guy. Okay, he's gone. There's no bringing him back. But if you're somebody who's super upset about this and who's like, and who wants to go do something about it and who's going to go carry a weapon and do the same thing that this guy was doing, you know, having a bunch of people saying like, oh yeah, like this shouldn't have happened, and like, you know, they shouldn't be allowed to do this and blah, 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 blah. Like, that's going to encourage other people to do this and have the same result. Like, you need people to understand that there are real consequences to your actions and that you don't always get what you deserve, right? Like, this isn't about what you deserve, right? Like the idea, like that seems to be what so much of this conversation is about, is like, did this guy deserve to get shot? Okay. That's not, but that's not the question, right? The question is not, did you deserve to get shot? That's not the legal question. Now, maybe it's a moral question, but also at the same time, though, is like my grandmother had an expression, okay? And this is how times have changed. My grandmother had an expression. She used to say, like, she would be watching like the nightly news or something like that, and you'd hear this story about something happening to somebody, and she would always say, nothing good happens after midnight.
Yeah.
And as a kid, like, I understood what she meant. Like, what she meant was the conditional probability that, you know, something bad happens to you goes up the later that you are out, you know, in public. Okay.
100%. Yep.
But today, the way that would be interpreted as, oh, so they deserved it then because it was 1 a.m. So they deserved it. Because people are like incapable of like understanding that, like, when you tell somebody, hey, don't do this because something bad is more likely to happen if you do that than if you don't do it. People are, because there's this idea that it's like, no, I can do whatever I want, and society should just be the way that I want it to be, so that such that it allows me to do these things. Yeah, that's great. We would all love that. We would all love if society was so safe that you could just go around and do whatever you want.
Sure.
But there's this attitude now that it's sort of like, well, you don't deserve these bad things to happen to you after midnight. So therefore, like, by saying, oh, you shouldn't, you know, that you know, good things don't happen after midnight, what you're doing is like, you're just denigrating the people who have these bad things happen to them, and you're blaming the victim, right? Like, that's the new thing. And it's like, no, what you're talking about is like making a judgment call, thinking about what you're doing, thinking about the consequences of your actions before you take those actions. And like, in this instance, this guy did the opposite of everything that they teach you to do in a concealed carry class. while concealed carrying with police officers around, right? Like this is
federal agents.
Yes, like these people carry guns. These people are engaged in apprehending people who are going to be deported.
And these are typically very focused people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I mean, these are not like super laid back. You ever hung around some FBI agents? Those aren't exactly the most laid back people on earth. Now, they're really smart, and a lot of times they're awesome, and they're fun to talk to. But when they're at work, when they're in the field, these are pretty laser focused, serious human beings.
You have to be, because think about it, like the same training that I'm describing that you get in a concealed carry class, like you're getting that times 10 in like law enforcement,
of
right?
course,
Like
because every single day could be the day. Every single day could be the day that you walk into a violent situation and you have to be prepared to act immediately. It's really that simple.
And the expectations on you are high, right?
Yes.
Like, because you are the person who's walking around with a firearm on their hip at all times.
Yes.
And so you
have a higher standard of responsibility.
Yes, you are the person who is to try to de-escalate situations and those sorts of things. And this is why they teach you these things. When you are interfering with federal agents and you are getting pepper sprayed and still coming forward and then still resisting arrest, like you are compounding all of the potential problems that happen. That doesn't mean that you deserve the outcome. It just means that your actions made that outcome more likely.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that makes it tragic.
So why is this happening in Minnesota? I mean, it seems like, these ICE operations are happening all over the country, and yet for some reason, Minnesota feels like the epicenter of protest. And maybe it's not. Maybe that's not fair. Maybe this is a couple of isolated incidents that just coincidentally occurred in Minnesota, but it doesn't seem that way.
No, I don't think so. I mean, like, look, we live in Oxford. You can watch the Memphis news every single night. You don't see any of this on the Memphis news. There is a huge federal presence in the city of Memphis.
Yeah.
Right? It made national news when the federal presence arrived in Memphis.
I was in New Orleans 4 weeks ago. There was a huge federal presence there, and I watched the news a couple of times, and there was these things were not happening there.
What is like the reason that Memphis is so different from Minneapolis is that the state and local governments in Memphis and in Tennessee are cooperating with the federal government. In Minneapolis, neither the city nor the state are cooperating with the federal government. So, for example, in Memphis, let's say a police officer in Memphis pulls somebody over, and they pull this person over and they realize that this person is not here legally. They take that person into custody. They make a phone call. They call immigration and customs, right? And they call them and they say, hey, we got a guy here. He's here illegally. We're holding him. You can come pick him up. That's how these things are handled. And that's how they should be handled, is like through cooperation. Because when these ICE agents show up at the jail, there is no confrontation at the jail. Okay? Like the arresting officer, essentially hands them over to the federal agent.
Yeah.
There's no conflict.
Sign some paperwork and away you go.
Right. What is happening is that in Minneapolis, they are refusing to cooperate. They are refusing to cooperate with these federal agents, and the state government is also not helping. Because there are other places in Minnesota that actually are enforcing the law, where you can see police out preventing protests, preventing people from getting involved in these kinds of things. Like if you go into like some of the suburbs there, you have local police who are basically preventing people from getting involved in these kinds of things. In Minneapolis, you haven't had that at all. You have not had any of that because they're not cooperating. Okay. And this is the other thing that's bad, because this also contributes to one of the reasons that this guy probably got shot, is that you don't just have people protesting. This is not a protest. These are not people just carrying signs saying, please leave. This is not what's going on.
Right.
You have people who are standing outside, repeatedly making noise and blowing whistles like all day long. You have people who are getting physically involved in these apprehensions. You have people blowing whistles. You have people shouting at the agents, all these kinds of things. Those people are actually not there to protest. They are there because they're trying to create these situations, which is another tragic aspect to this, because how many of the people who are out there know that the purpose of this is actually to get somebody injured or killed? Because that's what they're doing. They're trying to get people injured or killed. They're trying to create bad shootings is what they're trying to do. They're trying to create interactions with these agents that they can broadcast all over social media and hopefully get on the news so that they can turn the tide of public opinion against this immigration action, against this enforcement. They are putting people deliberately in harm's way. They are making it more likely that these people are in harm's way because of the tactics that they are using. This is not a surprise. I don't think it's a surprise that this is happening in Minnesota. I don't think it's a surprise that this is happening in Minneapolis, like in the weeks that follow all of these investigations into the fraud that's going on in the state of Minnesota and in Minneapolis more specifically.
Shout out, by the way, to the Leering Center. Appreciate you guys.
Check cleared. The
so nice.
But no, seriously,
that money was clean too, man. Oof, it had been laundered. Did you see how fresh it was?
I mean,
it was amazing.
It was weird that they sent it in an envelope. It was, I thought they would send a check, but they just
sent cash.
Yeah,
cold hard cash.
And so it is. I don't think that that's a coincidence either. But I think what people have to understand, though, is that the people who are getting the people who are really involved in these things, like this is a very organized and coordinated thing. Like these people have, signal chats where they're coordinating this activity, where they're telling people exactly where people are going to be, where they're doing all of these things. And including there's allegations that the person who is actually running the communications for this is this woman, Peggy Flanagan, who's like the, I don't know, she's the lieutenant governor, maybe. Peggy Flanagan, by the way, you might have thought to yourself, is that woman Native American? That sounds like a very Native American name, Peggy Flanagan. And you would be correct. She claims to be Native American.
Margaret Flanagan. She was born September 22nd, 1979, is an American politician and, I hate that, Ojibwe activist, serving as the 50th Lieutenant Governor of Minnesota since 2019, a political progressive and a member of the Minnesota Democratic Farmer Labor Party. Flanagan served in the Minnesota House of Reps from 2015 to 2019. She grew up in St. Louis Park, Minnesota, which is an inner ring suburb of Minneapolis. She's a citizen of the White Earth Nation. She got her start as a community organizer. Organizing the urban indigenous community, including for U.S. Senator Paul Wellstone's ill-fated 2002 re-election campaign. Flanagan was elected to and served on the Minneapolis Public Schools Board from 2005 to 2009. She was elected lieutenant governor in 2018 and reelected in 22, both times as Tim Walz's running mate. That party's awesome. I can't imagine how great that party was. Becoming the first woman of color. She's a woman of color. She looks white. Becoming a woman of color, elected to statewide office in Minnesota, and at the time of her election, the highest-ranked Native American woman to hold elected office in the country. On February 13th of 2025, Flanagan announced her candidacy for the U.S. Senate seat, to which Tina Smith has declined to run for re-election in 2026. So,
as you might expect from a woman named Flanagan, she's like the most Irish-looking Native American you've ever seen. But no, seriously, like this whole thing, like what they have going on is...
She's got something going on called Ojibwe Gizilwidamukwe. I don't understand some of that. She's trying to change her name to Peggy Flanagan. Man, if she gets elected, I feel so bad for the clerk in the U.S. Senate when she or he calls for her vote, because he'll have to say, Ms. Gizil Widamuke. He'll quit. Yeah. He'll just say, "Can I call you Peggy?"
And so the thing is that this is a coordinated effort. Like this is very organized. It's coordinated. And the design of this is like, I'm sorry, but like these are just old Marxist tactics. Okay, so what do we think of when we think of Marxist tactics? Okay, it starts with demoralization. Okay, what is demoralization? Demoralization is a sort of decades-long, process, right? Like you really invest in sort of convincing people. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You invest in convincing people that there's like something wrong with their culture, that there's something wrong with them, that like the things that they believe about themselves and their society are wrong, that they that they have no moral standing to to even engage in debate, right? There's this, so that's how all sort of Marxism begins, is through this demoralization process. And then once you get through that demoralization process through, I don't know, like taking over the school system and teaching them all that, like, they're horrible, horrible people, and that who are responsible for the sins of their parents and grandparents and great grandparents and all of their ancestors. Except Peggy, because Peggy is Native American, so she is immune to any. She's immune. She's immune to any.
I'm enjoying her bio here. Can we just talk about a few of her bio, because I think it's fascinating.
Yeah.
She's a progressive Democrat. She supports universal health care through Medicare for all. She condemned the killing of Renee Good by an ICE agent in Trump's mass deportation campaign. She said she supports a complete and total overhaul of ICE, criticized her Democratic primary opponent, Angie Craig, for being politically expedient and for voting for the Lake and Riley Act, and a resolution expressing gratitude to ICE agents. That's what Craig was for. She supported the Lake and Riley Act. Flanagan has since expressed support for dismantling ICE, replacing it, viewing it as beyond reform. She's an advocate for Indigenous people's rights. While a legislator, she sponsored the creation of a task force on missing and murdered Indigenous women. Later, she sponsored a mandate for tribal consultation in state affairs. And as lieutenant governor, she created the nation's first missing and murdered Indigenous relatives office. She has authored several bills for employer-provided child care and state-sponsored child care assistance. The following will not shock you. Flanagan supports transgender rights and providing gender-affirming care to transgender youth.
You should see if you can put in a little Google machine there. Ask it to show her a picture of her in a trans activism T-shirt, and then tell me what you find. I'll talk while you do it.
Okay.
So this is how it starts, right? It starts through demoralization.
And what kind of T-shirt again?
It's like a trans rights T-shirt. It should come to the top. But this is how it starts. It starts through demoralization, and then they move towards destabilization, right? So once you demoralize a people, once you convince these people that they have no moral authority, once you convince people that like their society is just completely irredeemable, then you move on to destabilization, right? And so then in destabilization, you're just trying to create a bunch. The destabilization is designed to lead to crisis, right? What you're trying to do is you're trying to provoke a crisis in which your opponents do something horrific that they cannot come back from, right? That allows you to turn public opinion in that way, so that what follows is a fourth stage called normalization. And in the normalization stage, you take power, and then now you implement your preferred Marxist system over everybody else. Did you find the T-shirt?
I did find the T-shirt.
Would you like to describe the T-shirt?
Well, there's one that it appears. Let me see if I can get a little bigger view here. It has it's a white T-shirt. It has a picture of what appears to be Peggy, who does Lieutenant Governor Flanagan. I'm having a hard time reading some of the words. Something Mugwitch.
Well, she's got one.
There are lots of shirts available.
Well, she's got one that is like a protect trans rights shirt.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
And it's written in the same script as it says protect trans kids under the word protect, which is written in sort of a Detroit Tigers If you envision the Detroit Tigers
like the old
English D, which is a phenomenal uniform, by the way. Under the word protect, it has a knife that appears to not be a steak knife, more of a let's cut somebody knife.
Yeah.
Trans, and under that appears to be some sort of a leaf or something.
Yeah.
And then kids.
So it's weird that you would have it like a knife, right? Like it's weird that you would have a gigantic knife under the word protect, right? Like that
feels like a knife that you would use to cut someone.
Yeah.
To protect yourself.
Yeah.
Not to necessarily like chop up an onion.
Yeah.
For your soup.
Or chop off genitalia either. Not that either.
Oh, well, that's true.
That's
I didn't even think about that.
No. It's more of a stabbing knife, I think, if I had to describe it.
I think I would call it a stabbing knife. Yeah. Yes. A hunting knife.
Yeah. So it's a weird thing to put on a t-shirt about protecting people's rights. This woman is not stable. These people, like, this is an organized effort. It is demoralization, destabilization. You know, that's what all this is about.
How do they win, though? This is what drives me crazy. Is like,
how do they win? But this gets back to what we talked about last time.
I mean, she's been elected twice,
but they win because they are up against the most beautiful losers that you have ever seen in your entire life. Like the modern Republican Party is full of beautiful losers. They are full of like the best losers
100%
out there. You already saw this week. Like you have what is obviously an orchestrated attempt to provoke altercations with ICE agents. Okay. You see the deliberate attempt to provoke these confrontations. That is what all of this is designed to do. These people are not standing on the street with a sign that say, please leave our city. These are people blowing whistles, pushing federal agents, getting in their faces, trying to stop them from apprehending people, interfering with these apprehensions. They are trying to provoke a response. And they're trying to provoke a response. Why? Because they know that there's some weak-kneed Republican out there who's going to finally see the video and go, you know what, guys, like we've gone too far. You already saw this. There were a bunch of Republicans and Democrats coming together this week going, you know, maybe one way to solve this illegal immigration problem is like we just grant amnesty to a bunch of these people who are here illegally. Is that what people voted for? No, people actually voted for these arrests is what they voted for.
Yeah.
What people didn't vote for is they did not vote to bring in millions of people without their permission. They did not vote for that. What they voted for is, hey, there's millions and millions of people who have been brought across the border, and we would like them to go back. That's what people voted for. You can like that, you can dislike it, but that's clearly what they voted for.
Yes.
And so but then what's happening is see, our political class doesn't want that. The political class doesn't want it, right? Because you've got this coalition.
They don't want what?
They don't want the people to go back. They're in favor of this. They're in favor of all of this. They're in favor of it for a variety of reasons. One, you have people who are true believers. They're people who think like open borders. We should just let everybody.
Utopia.
We should just let everybody in. This is the greatest country in the world. Why wouldn't we let people in? Like, let's just let everybody in.
Peace, love, joy.
We have the true believers.
Mm-hmm.
We've got the other people who want it purely for, personal political gain. They think that bringing these people in is going to change census numbers. They think that it's going to change voting numbers. They think that they are going to set up political patronage schemes by which they give money to these people in exchange for those people repaying them with support, like through voting and through things like that. Okay. And so you've got people like that. And then you've got the people who are making money off of all of this. You've got the people who run the NGOs that bring these people in, who provide, these NGOs that are like, providing food and shelter to these people, all with government taxpayer money, by the way. Right. Like, so you have all of those people. They don't want them to go back. And then you also have this in the coalition, you have all of these people who want really, really cheap labor. That's what you have. Like, there was a great story. You can look this up. There was a story in the Washington Post years and years ago. This was like early on in the Trump administration. There was a story in the Washington Post, and the story in the Washington Post was about a small town in Minnesota, and it was about basically all the racist people in this small town in Minnesota, because they were complaining that there had been this massive influx of immigrants into their town that did not speak English. There was a bunch of kids who didn't speak English who were going to the schools. The school system had to hire more teachers to accommodate the additional students. And not only more teachers, they had to hire interpreters so that the students who didn't speak English could actually, so that they could actually learn. Okay. And the story in the Washington Post was all about like the mean, evil, racist people who live in this Minnesota town who just like aren't accepting of these immigrants. Fast forward then, there's another story in 2020 in the Washington Post about this same town.
Okay.
Okay. And the same town just happens to be a town where there's a big meat packing plant. Now, why do you think that there would be this influx of a bunch of people who don't speak English into this town where there also happens to be a meatpacking plant? It's pretty obvious. It's because that's where they're working, and that is what's happening. So you have this other part of the coalition that's like, we want cheap foreign labor.
Yep.
We want people who are desperate to come here,
Yep.
who will work for pennies on the dollar so that we don't have to pay an American to do this job. Right. And you listen to these people go on CNBC and things like that. And they say, well, we just, we need immigrants in this country because, there's just certain jobs that Americans won't do. Yeah. Finish the sentence. There's jobs that Americans won't do for the wage that I would like to pay them.
Right.
That's what they really mean. Like for higher wages, Americans would do those jobs.
Right.
But Americans do want to be compensated for doing jobs that aren't very, enjoyable to do, right? Like if I'm going to get paid the same amount of money to like stand in front of a cash register as I am to scrub toilets all day long, I'm going to choose the cash register.
Sure.
Why would I scrub toilets for the same amount of money that I can just stand and like ring people out at the grocery store?
Sure.
Like that doesn't make any sense. If I'm going to be doing these like these jobs that require me, getting exposed to germs and dirt and all this stuff and cleaning up after, people doing the nastiest things in public restrooms, I'm going to want to be paid a premium for that, right? Like that's just a normal thing. But the thing is that no, like what happens is you've got this coalition of people who are like, no. We just want to pay like the bare minimum. Like, we're just talking about cleaning toilets here. Like we just want, like that should just be the cheapest thing, that expense that we have. Right. And so you have these people who are part of this coalition who want the cheap labor. Okay. And so given that coalition, it's not surprising. Literally, you can watch this. It's like clockwork. Every single time that there is a negative story about immigration, about ICE, about Border Patrol, about anything, every single time that there's a sufficiently negative story, what happens is Democrats become outraged. But then there are all these Republicans who come forward and go, I've seen the video and it's really tragic what happened here. And like, maybe we should just give amnesty to all of these people. And like, maybe that's the most humane thing to do. And it's like, no. Nobody voted for that. Okay. Also, it's very clear what you're doing. Like you're taking advantage of a situation where you're saying, oh, hey, public opinion seems to be swinging in our favor. Let's hurry up and do this thing that we would like to do anyway, while public opinion is in our favor. And that's the problem, is that you have these people who are just not, they're not committed to doing what the American people actually want them to do. Because they don't represent the American people. They don't. Like these people are representing either their own interest, the interest of their NGO, the interest of their election prospects, right? The interest, and then you do have some true believers who are like, hey, those people will have a better life here than they would have there. Well, maybe they would. But if that's the case, then what you need to do is you need to design an immigration system that would allow those people to come here legally, right? But here's the problem. You've already screwed up the system so bad now that there's no appetite for even doing it legally anymore. Like the debate in the United States used to be about like, hey, we've got too much illegal immigration. Maybe we should reform the immigration system, right? That's not the debate anymore. Now the debate's like, hey, just close the whole thing down. Nobody comes in, right? Like that's now where the debate has gone.
Yeah.
And it's gone there because of this blatant abuse of power and the fact that they continue to ignore the interests of the American voter for their own benefit.
It's a fascinating topic. Jack's All Trades, thank you for the super chat. He said this should be a call-in show. Need to talk China. We can do a call-in show sometime. That's doable. Yeah, Jay Robertson said there's a reason Springdale, Arkansas, home of Tyson Food, has one of the country's largest population of immigrants from El Salvador. Yeah.
If you look into this, if you look like if you look into this, especially like the food industry, the meat packing industry, like if you look into this, like you will find this pattern all throughout the United States. Is like they're literally just importing cheap labor, like just specifically for these companies. And so when you see that this is so, then when you see, um, when you see people, and here's the thing is that there's enough of these places that are in like red states, right? That you have a bunch of Republicans who are like, oh, hey guys, let's kind of chill on the immigration stuff, because who are they getting a phone call from? They're getting a phone call from these people in these industries who are like, hey, I donated a bunch of money to your campaign and you're trying to, kick my workers out. I mean, they're not going to be that explicit about it, right? But you understand the deal. And it's I think like it's a sad thing, because when you look at this country, what you see is that it is increasingly clear that we have a ruling class who does not care about the rank and file American, that they do not care about votes. They don't care about public opinion polls, right? Like what they care about is they know better. And that's what they're there to do, right? Is they're there to implement the thing, all of these policies because they know better. And, you backwards people, in flyover country, like you just don't understand how the world works. Like that's genuinely what they think.
Yeah.
And we've now arrived in that position where, and it transcends party, which people need to understand is
Absolutely.
that like it transcends party. There are a bunch of Republicans who go along with all of this stuff. Why? Because they get invited to all the fancy cocktail parties, because they get kickbacks from these companies, or they get donations from these companies, or they get kickbacks from these schemes that, the Democrats are running. And so like
it's not just Nancy Pelosi that gets rich on Capitol Hill.
No.
Yeah.
And no, and I mean, like, look, I mean, you want to call people out. There was a story the other day about Katie Britt, the senator from Alabama, like making a stock trade that was extremely profitable, and she did not disclose it in time. Her penalty was she had to pay like a $200 fine.
Oh,
like, I mean,
that'll hurt.
I mean, that was maybe like, I would be surprised if that was 1% of her gains was $200.
Of course it was.
And so
significantly less than 1%.
And so the thing is that like there is actually no penalty for doing things like that. And and it goes on across the board. It's not just, it's not just limited to one political party, but that's part of the problem. And this is part of the problem that the Trump administration poses to all of these other people. And this is one of the reasons why like you see so much pushback on everything, because even the foreign policy stuff, it's the same kind of money laundering kickback schemes that they're just running overseas, because it's much harder to trace the money that gets sent to Ukraine, for example, than it is, to Minneapolis or whatever. And so the issue is that when the Trump administration comes in and is basically like, you can think whatever you want of Trump. Okay, you think whatever you want of Trump. But this time around, the people in his administration who are in positions of authority in his administration, these are people who've been thinking about this stuff for a really long time, who recognize the weaknesses inherent in the system because of how things run, and they are trying to change it. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all great. That doesn't mean that that some of them aren't, involved in some of the same crap that these other people are. But for the most part, the reason that you see so much pushback is because they're turning off the spigot. They're turning off the spigot on a lot of this stuff because they're actually redirecting foreign policy towards, I don't know, like America's interests rather than like the interests of the ruling class, right? Where they're actually looking at this and saying like, hey, we actually have to be able to defend ourselves. Hey, we actually need to have an industrial base capable of, producing the things that we need in case we find ourselves at war. We actually have to have a system that doesn't lead to perpetual accumulation of debt and an unwinding of the dollar-based system. Like that, we actually need, we actually need some kind of rule of law with regards to immigration, right? That we can't just, we can't just import tens of millions of people into the United States without anybody's permission and without any sort of legal process by which this is done, right? Like this is lawless behavior. This is corrupt behavior, and this is why there's so much pushback because because the thing is that for most of the ruling class, they're in the looting of the treasury stage. They're in this country is rich. We don't have any borrowing limits. We can borrow all this money. Like we can do all of this stuff. And so the way that they view it as like, what's the problem if we take a little off the top, right? What's the problem if we're running these schemes to enrich ourselves? Like we can afford it. We can do these things. But the thing is like the more that you push in that direction, the more that you lose sight of like what's actually going on, right? The more that you lose sight of like the things that are actually important. The further that you move in that direction, the less that you're selecting on competence on issues, and the more that you're selecting on competence for engaging in various schemes, right? Like this has to come to an end. We have to go back to being a serious country. We have to. Like that is required. We cannot continue on the path that we are on and just hope that things are going to work out. We have to get back to competent leadership. We have to get back to people who take these things seriously. We have to get back to people who understand how the world actually works and not how they believe it to work in some textbook somewhere.
100%. All right, last thing, totally different subject. You came in here wearing your Cubs hat. This is your reaction to Alex Bregman being signed? They've sold hope to you. The Cubs have. Have they somehow convinced you that maybe there's a path? They trade Kyle Tucker essentially for Alex Bregman, and now suddenly everything's going to be well, and you're wearing your Cubs hat in January. We're gonna win the whole thing. Is that what's going on inside your head?
No. I'm never. When it comes to the Cubs, I'm never particularly optimistic. I haven't been optimistic, since the sort of Joe Madden years, and before that, I really wasn't optimistic. Other than maybe like the Lou Piniella years, I actually thought that they were better than things turned out.
I will admit, when they signed Alfonso Soriano, I thought, here we go, and we did win 2 divisions.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I think that. I think that the Dodgers paid Kyle Tucker a ridiculous amount of money, so I don't regret Kyle Tucker leaving.
I mean, good for him.
Yeah,
that's insane.
Actually, what I'm most concerned about is the future of baseball, because I think that there's going to be a work stoppage, because of the Dodgers. Like, I think that the other teams are just fed up. Because you have this system.
There was a story in The Athletic this last week. I actually linked it in 10 Thoughts that I think I did. Maybe I didn't. I don't know. Tuesday was a weird day. We got power back and stuff. No, there were a lot of owners who viewed the Kyle Tucker signing by the Dodgers, 4 years, $240 million, all sorts of opt-outs and crazy shit. I mean, good for Kyle Tucker, by the way. I mean, good for you, man. Hey, I don't blame you for signing it.
No, get paid.
Yeah, get yours. But he was not a $60 million player last year at all. But a lot of owners looked at that and said, that's it. That's the final straw. Okay, we'll go to the mattresses. You know what? We'll take this thing as far as it has to take it. We are going to get a salary cap come hell or high water. We are going to make these people hurt. If we do it long enough, they'll eventually relent, and we're going to get this thing under control. Now, I think they're wrong, because I think the players' union is so strong that even though there will absolutely be players who feel the pain, I think they will roll up their sleeves and say, we'll go as long as it takes. I'm going to tell you this. I do not believe there will be a 2027 season.
Well, I think also maybe people have a I think I have the reputation of the Major League Baseball Players Association is that they're an incredibly strong union, and they're hard to break. But I think the world today is very different than the world was in 1994.
Okay.
I think that owners of these teams are substantially, like, look, if you own a sports franchise, you are wealthy. But I think the level of wealth that these owners of sports franchises have today is much greater in real terms than in like purchasing power terms than it was in 1994. And I think that's a problem for the players. And I think it's a problem for the players because the rich owner is like, look, suppose your owner is, 60 years old. He's going to say, look, statistically speaking, I'm already 60. I'm probably going to live to 85. I got 25 years to make up the money that I lost this season.
Sure.
You only get to be 30 one time.
Oh yeah, no. When you're a Major League Baseball player, your earning window is a small one. I mean, yeah, sure, there are some guys that play 15, 20 years. Most guys don't. Most guys play 4, 5, 6 years.
I also think it's hard. By the way, in the court of public opinion, because contracts like Kyle Tucker's are going to make it hard for the players. Because normally the public kind of sides with the players because they're like rich owner versus player.
Yeah.
But if the player's making $60 million a year, like it's like like
hard to
rich owner versus rich player, like the sort of
hate them both.
Yeah, it's just kind of like whatever, just
sure.
Go, So for this season, I mean, I think that the Cubs benefit because I still think it's a 2-team division, and I think that the Cubs can compete with the team that they have in those circumstances and probably make the playoffs. I'm not super confident that I don't think they're really that. I don't think they're really any better than they were last year on paper. In which case, and in last year, I was hopeful that they could make a World Series run, but I didn't think it was realistic.
Right.
And I kind of feel the same this season. Is like I'm pretty confident they can make the playoffs, assuming no horrific injuries or something. But
yeah, the Brewers and Cubs have this 5-game Donnybrook of a series, and the Brewers go to play the Dodgers, and it's just like see ya. Now the Blue Jays came super close. I mean, an inch from beating the mighty Dodgers, so it can be done. But I mean, if someone offers you the Dodgers or the field, you actually think really hard about going Dodgers. In any other sport, if someone says, "Hey, do you want in basketball, do you want Thunder or the field?" Field. Nuggets or the field? Field. In football, there's no team that you would go, hey, even before the season, if someone had said, and no one would have said Seahawks or Patriots or the field. I mean, that's the point of the NFL, right? But if someone had said to you, hey, Chiefs or the field, you'd be like, I mean, Mahomes wins, but shit. I mean, give me the field.
Yeah.
In baseball, you'd actually think about it. Dodgers or the field? Dodgers are the other 29 teams. Dodgers?
Yeah, it's a problem.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's a problem.
I mean, think about that. That's insanity that you would even have the thought. And yet, in every other sport, there's no other sport where someone would offer you, hey, Edmonton Oilers of the field. Field. So yeah, it's a big problem. It's one of the reasons that this new method of college football is popular with so many people. Is that 6 years ago, the idea of Indiana finishing first nationally, of Ole Miss finishing third, of Indiana finishing first and Ole Miss finishing third is, I mean, people would have said you're on drugs. And now it's, people look at it and go, well, there's a path for anyone. So with that, we'll stop. Thanks to everyone in the stream. I didn't miss your super chat, Jacks of all trades. He said, congrats on getting the Astros scraps. Hey. Fair enough. I mean, he's the one wearing the hat. I'm still hanging on to Thunder Hope right now. All right, we'll stop it there. Thanks everybody for being with us. We'll be back in a couple weeks with another edition of the Josh Hendrickson Show. Until then, for Josh, I'm Neal. Take care.